we had yet another mass shooting in this country. Again, this is not a surprise. We have a mass shooting nearly every day. Nonetheless, the Tulsa, a medical center in Tulsa, is the most recent setting for a mass shooting. According to reports, a man carrying a semi-automatic AR-15 rifle as well as a pistol went into this hospital, opened fire, killed 4 people before taking his own life. So now within minutes, and this is interesting because the police actually stressed this after the Uvalde shooting. They're like, oh no, we immediately ran inside. Like, we're not like those cowards in Uvalde that stood outside for nearly an hour. We ran right into that building immediately, instantly, which again is what they're supposed to do. In an active shooter situation, the protocol is to get in there as quick as possible. So now, and again, I love how they had to stress this. Like, no, we went in. We were not cowardly. Okay, we went right in. Now, that said, the details of this are different, of course, than what happened in Buffalo, which, by the way, Buffalo, the shooter in Buffalo has been charged with, I think, 25 different counts, hate crime charges, etc., because that was a racially motivated shooting. As far as what happened in Uvalde, again, we don't necessarily know exactly why he decided to choose this elementary, but apparently in this case, we do have an idea what happened. So now, the suspect, let me get into the details, has already been identified as 45-year-old Michael Lewis. Public records list Lewis as a resident of a home in Muskogee that Tulsa police had asked local police to search for a possible bomb. So not only was there a shooting, but there was a possible bomb threat at his own house, or not threat at his own house, but there was the possibility that there was a bomb. They didn't find anything. That home was evacuated on Wednesday night. During a press conference on Thursday, we got more details. Tulsa Police Chief Wendell Franklin told reporters that the gunman, who is a black man, had been a surgery patient of one of the victims, Dr. Preston Phillips, who also was a black man. So understand, in this situation, this is more, it's not really a random act of violence, but also not terrorism related, not racially motivated, so just different. Okay. Nonetheless, you're going to see, of course, it all has the same underlying thread of easy access to weaponry. So now, other victims included Dr. Stephanie Hewson, a receptionist, Amanda Green, and another patient, William Love. Apparently, those 3 had just gotten in the shooter's way in order to go after Dr. Phillips. So now, Lewis ended up having back surgery back on May 19th that was performed by Phillips. He subsequently called several times for the next several days, complaining about pain and wanting additional treatment. Lewis saw Phillips on Tuesday for some additional treatment, called Phillips' office again on Wednesday before the shooting, complaining of back pain and wanting additional assistance. After the shooting, the police found on Lewis a letter which made it clear that he came in with the intent of killing Dr. Phillips and anybody who got in his way. Unfortunately, of course, those other 3 had gotten in the way of this man's murderous intent. Lewis ended up buying an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle from a gun store at 2 p.m. on Wednesday. So the day before the shooting, police were called about the shooting shortly before 5 p.m. I'm sorry, not a day before the shooting. A different weapon, a handgun, was also purchased earlier on May 29th, the source told CNN. In addition, fewer than 10 people suffered non-life-threatening injuries, according to Tulsa Police Captain Richard Muhlenberg. Authorities are trying to determine if they were wounded by the gunfire or during the chaos of escaping the scene. No officers were injured. And so now, the shooting, of course, not believed to be indiscriminate. From what we can tell right now, very, very motivated. Very motivated, very purposeful. In fact, here's what Muhlenberg had said. He very purposely went to this location, went to a very specific floor, and shot with a very specific purpose. Not a random shooting. When initially reached by the Daily Beast Wednesday night, Lewis's family had expressed some disbelief that he may have been involved. Quote, this is his niece. This is really crazy. Like, this is shocking. No one in our family, like nobody in our family, has this type of behavior. No one. So look, obviously terrible situation, right? And again, what underlies all this entire situation is the guns. It is the thread that connects this to Uvalde, to Buffalo, to all the other mass shootings that we have. It doesn't matter necessarily what the motive is. I mean, it does, yes. But when you have guns that are so easily accessible to anybody at any time, basically what you have in this country is guns on demand. You have a normally sane person that can become the next mass shooter. I've said this before. You're a good guy with a gun until you're not. Until you might have something go wrong with your life. Or until you're in debilitating pain, either mental or physical. Now, that said, I'm not saying that everybody in pain obviously becomes a mass murderer. That's ridiculous. But what I am saying is that there are certain people going through certain things that at certain times should not have access to high-powered weaponry. Because it makes that person, who has murderous intent, by the way, maybe they feel wronged, to more easily be able to act upon those impulses, where rationality, where clear thought goes right out the window. This could be a case, and it certainly seems like it, where it was easier to get a gun than it was to get proper health care. That's really something that I don't think gets talked about enough. And look, you know, when you have conservative politicians that throw out things like, oh, mental illness. So now they've used that card to distract from guns. But of course, mental illness, yes, that is a valid point, right? Because we can point out, sure, we don't have valid mental health care in this country. We have millions of people that can't afford health care in general, thanks to our for-profit system. So are we going to actually do anything about health care? No, because there's never a response from Republicans when asked that question. And so, of course, they throw it out as a distraction from the gun. Now, we also have an issue with chronic pain patients that are being denied medication over fears of addiction to that medication or becoming addicted. Now, that, of course, does happen as well, but also that doesn't mean that every person that takes that medication to manage chronic pain is an addict, okay? It does not mean that. It doesn't mean that. And so understand that there are a lot of different contributing factors to, I believe, this particular shooting. However, the underlying issue, again, is easy access to these high-powered weapons. So, now, Deborah Proctor, a nurse who was in the building next door, talked to the Daily Beast. Here's what she told them. Quote, "It's very sad on mass shootings. We just keep having them every day, every year, until we decide that we've had enough. In my mind, it's like a massive car collision. Then I thought maybe it's a fire, but then you realize the active shooter is right next door. I've seen my share of gunshot wounds, so I understand the dark side of humanity, but I feel bad for those whose families who have lost someone again. Because we continue to turn away from any simple action that we could take, people will have lifelong suffering and sorrow. Who is going to take responsibility for the blood on their hands? The only solution is to vote out the people who don't give a damn. And they keep turning away from the most simplest responses to gun safety. So that means we condone that gun violence because we keep coming up with bullshit excuses like mental illness. But every country has mental illness. Only we have the mass shootings." So, I mean, there's a lot there, obviously. But she's right. We do turn away from that. We don't talk about that. Yes, there are lots of bullshit excuses that are thrown out. In fact, the next segment, we're going to talk about that. Mental health, the breakdown of the family, and all these things that you can't really legislate or do anything about as a congressperson, but you can absolutely pass simple measures like increased background checks. but they refuse to do so. Now, another person, endocrinologist David W. Harris, who works at the nearby Springer Clinic, echoed the fact that Congress is doing basically nothing, saying, quote, "No other country has this problem. No other country." That's because every other country apparently has a little bit more of a functional government than we do. And says, there is no safe place in this country anymore. So, look, here we are. Another day, another mass shooting. There's been at least 20 in Uvalde. I'm sorry, 20 since Uvalde. I think 22, 23. This makes the 233rd this year so far. But we know nothing's going to happen in Congress. I mean, the Democrats are too incredibly weak, and Republicans love blood money from the gun lobby. So nothing will happen. There is no safe place. Understand that when you live in an ocean of guns, it will eventually come to your town. Unless we stand up as we the people and actually take action to demand common sense gun reforms.